Welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to viewers in North America and around the globe. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones. Our top stories. The threat from Hawaii's Kilauea volcano continues. People are told to stay indoors due to the danger of toxic gases. A warning to Tehran. America's Secretary of State vows to impose the strongest sanctions in history on Iran. The inquiry into the deadly Grenfell Tower fire gets underway with harrowing testimony from relatives of the victims.
You know, at that moment, we felt like our hearts had broken.
And delving into the royal wedding album, official portraits of the happy couple on their big day have been released. Hello, we start in Hawaii, where people are being warned to stay indoors with the windows closed to limit exposure to toxic gases as flows of molten rock have gathered pace. The Kilauea volcano on the Big Island started erupting on May the 3rd, but shows no signs of slowing. Around 2,000 people have already left their homes. Chris Buckler is on the island.
After erupting from deep beneath the ground of this island, lava has now reached the ocean, and to get here, it has destroyed all in its path. Molten rock stands more than 20 feet high, where it has claimed the land, still burning and still deeply dangerous. Well, you can see how roads have become cut off, because this is a huge mound of lava that has made its way down from the various fissures, the cracks in the grounds that have opened up, and the lava has simply fountained out. The smoke and fumes are toxic, but that's not the only worry. Sections of this scorched surface are still being split apart.
What we're concerned about is that there is the possibility of additional fissures opening up, or even lava that might be traveling in tubes under the surface that could spring up elsewhere.
Yet some living close to where the lava is continuing to jet out at a ferocious rate haven't left their homes. Kilauea has long been their neighbour, a volcano that erupted to create this land, but it is now destroying what is on it, and many have taken the decision to abandon their houses.
For many days I was sitting down at my house thinking that I didn't have to leave, and then the activity increased enormously.
Even to get into the evacuation area, we had to be escorted by the Hawaii National Guard. Thanks very much. And all who live near Kilauea know they can't ignore the volcano.
You could hear the fissures, you could hear the explosions all night and all day. Lately we've had about 100 earthquakes a day. The biggest one we had so far was 6.9.
This is a spectacular landscape. But beneath these craters it is continuing to be shaped, and with Kilauea still erupting, no one can be sure that the many prayers to the gods will be answered. Chris Buckler, BBC News, on the Big Island of Hawaii.
Well, next, the US has vowed to impose the strongest sanctions in history on Iran. The US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Iran will be battling to keep its economy alive after the sanctions take effect. His Iranian counterpart has claimed the US is a prisoner of its failed policies and will suffer the consequences. Mr. Pompeo is warning that there could be more to come.
We will apply unprecedented financial pressure on the Iranian regime. The leaders in Tehran will have no doubt about our seriousness. The Iranian regime should know that this is just the beginning. This sting of sanctions will be painful if the regime does not change its course from the unacceptable and unproductive path it has chosen to one that rejoins the League of Nations.
Well, the BBC's North America editor John Sopel has more on what the US is hoping to achieve with these sanctions.
Mike Pompeo is calling it a diplomatic roadmap. More realistic, it is America waving a very big stick at Iran and trying to alter its behaviour. The Iran nuclear deal just concerned itself with whether Iran was developing a nuclear program. This concerns itself whether Iran is developing ballistic missiles, whether it's funding terror groups in the region, whether it's destabilising the region. They want to see a fundamental change in Iranian behaviour before sanctions would be lifted. And the important thing about these sanctions is they're not just going to affect US firms trading with Iran. Any multinational, whether based in Britain or France or Germany, would be hit by these sanctions if they also trade with the United States. So you've already seen Total, the French energy giant, saying we can no longer do any business with Iran as a result of this, and I'm sure an awful lot of other multinational companies will be reluctantly coming to the same conclusion as well.
John Sopel in Washington. Well, let's take a look at some of the other stories making the news now. Italy's anti-establishment Five Star Movement and the far-right League have put forward law professor Giuseppe Conte as their candidate for Prime Minister. The two parties are seeking permission from the President to form a coalition government, more than 2 months after winning the most seats in the general election. The Syrian army says it's retaken full control of the capital Damascus and its surrounding areas for the first time since the civil war began. The army made the announcement after capturing the last small enclave still held by the Islamic State group. It's a significant milestone in the country's 7-year civil war. A multi-billion-dollar bid for Sky from US telecoms giant Comcast may not be referred to the competition authorities in the UK. The decision could be seen as a blow for 21st Century Fox, which is also trying to buy Sky. The public inquiry into the Grenfell Tower fire has opened, and it began with a poignant 72-second silence to commemorate those who died. Over the coming days, the inquiry will examine the circumstances leading up to and surrounding the fire. But the first testimony has come from relatives paying harrowing and heartbreaking tribute to their lost loved ones. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning reports.
So many killed, so many lives cut short. None more so than Logan Gomez, not even born when he died after Grenfell. His family shared pictures with the inquiry, heartbreaking ones of their tiny stillborn son, so loved. They prayed he would open his eyes.
He looked like he was just sleeping, as babies do. You know, at that moment, we felt like our hearts had broken. And it had. But at least we were able to hold him and to be with him.
The joy of the baby shower, decorating nursery, choosing a name, all destroyed.
You never know what you are made of until you're broken.
Mohammed Neda, known as Sabah, fled the Taliban in Afghanistan. He came to Britain and started a chauffeuring business. His final message to his family from inside the burning tower played to a silent inquiry room. His wife's tribute read out by her solicitor.
It is just so sad that my beloved husband will not be with us at Fahad's wedding and will not be there to see and hold his grandchildren or share in the joy of becoming a grandparent. Those hopes and our dreams have been shattered. He was my husband. He was my best friend. I miss him so much. He will always be the love of my life.
Dennis Murphy had lived in Grenfell for more than 20 years. He had 3 big loves: family, friends and Chelsea. Not always in that order, his sister said.
He was the linchpin of our family and touched the lives of so many people. Once you had met Dennis, you would never forget his warmth, wit, cheeky smile and love of life. There's a gaping hole in our hearts that can never be filled, and it hurts. It really hurts.
A short but poignant tribute to 69-year-old Joseph Daniels was made by his son.
The events of that night took his life and all trace of his existence in this world. He never stood a chance of getting out. It should never have happened.
Mother and daughter Mary Mendy and Khadija Say died together. Mary remembered as strong, hard-working. Khadija, a photographer, lauded for her talent. The family's solicitor read the tribute.
There will be 2 empty chairs on the table for every birthday, Christmas and New Year's. But they will forever own a position in our hearts.
And then the inquiry heard Khadija's own words, filmed for a BBC documentary, talking about the future she would never have.
One of my friends said, "You're an artist." And I was like, I am now. There'll be quite an emotional moment to actually say, Khadija, you've done it. It's, you know, you're up there.
Tower is now largely covered up, but the Grenfell family's desperate for the truth to be exposed. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
Senior Palestinian officials say President Mahmoud Abbas, who's 82, is to remain in hospital on Monday night. Unconfirmed reports say he's suffering from pneumonia. The veteran leader has visited hospital 3 times in the last week, first for minor ear surgery and later for unspecified medical tests. The medical director at the hospital in Ramallah said Mr. Abbas's medical condition was reassuring. Well, stay with us on BBC News. Still to come. On the verge of European glory, we visit the Egyptian village where Mo Salah kicked his first football. This is BBC News, the latest headlines. The threat from Hawaii's Kilauea volcano continues. People are warned to stay indoors due to the danger of toxic gases. A warning to Tehran. America's Secretary of State vows to impose the strongest sanctions in history on Iran. Well, let's return to our top story now. Einat Leave is a volcanologist. She's an assistant research professor at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory at Columbia University. She's been helping officials monitor and track lava flows, and she joins us from Hilo, Hawaii. Well, we know you've been tracking this at times probably a little too closely. We'll get on to that in a moment. I want to start really with your assessment. What are you most worried about at the moment? What are the biggest dangers right now?
The biggest dangers are presented at 3 locations for my assessment. One is the area where the lava is entering the ocean. That causes a lot of steam and chemical reactions such as sulfuric acid that is going up in the air with a lot of glass particles. That anyone should not go there. There's been a high level of SO2 in quite a few places that have caused very large health risks. So there's a lot of closed roads. There's risk of fires from where the lava might run into the bushes and the brushes. Of course, there's the summit where there have been explosions and some earthquakes.
And let's get to your role now in tracking it. We can see some pictures now that you sent us, and here is you against the flow. What was it like being up close?
It was a lifetime. I don't know. I don't have words to describe it, seriously. I've seen lava before, but this is something else. It's just so basic to our being so close to it. And even that image that I sent you, I was, still quite about maybe a kilometer away, and it was so tall and high and bright.
And
I wouldn't want to.
You're an expert in these things, obviously, but you're saying you almost even got caught. It's that kind of unpredictable at the moment.
Right. So the other night we were monitoring the big flow that was heading towards the ocean, and the latest update that we had from the air surveying with the helicopters in the afternoon said that the flows merged and were advancing as a single flow. And then when we got close to it and put a drone up, we were seeing that it actually split again into two, and that we were standing in between where the two flows were headed to. So we had to backtrack, to be outside the area of the two flow advance fronts.
And that really shows the risks here, doesn't it? And actually the change, because of course this has been happening since the beginning of the month. But what's changed now is the intensity, the speed, and therefore the risks.
Yes. The lava that was coming out at the beginning was probably lava that was stored there for a while, for decades in the East Rift Zone, and was more sluggish. It made more big, kind of louder sounds, but it wasn't moving very fast. And now that there's fresh magma coming from the summit, that is a lot more runny. Things are moving very, very quickly.
And that increases the danger. Well, we're glad that you're safe. Thanks very much for joining us and sharing us your experiences and expertise. Thank you.
All right.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's re-election has been called a sham by the US after voting irregularities, and Washington is aiming new economic sanctions at the country in protest. More than a dozen nations are recalling their ambassadors to Venezuela after a controversial campaign in which some of Mr. Maduro's rivals were barred from running. All this as the country is ravaged by economic despair. The BBC's Katie Watson reports on what's next for Venezuelans.
Goodbyes are never easy, but if you don't know when the next hello will be, it's all the more painful. Claudia's on her way to Chile with her husband and sister, leaving their parents behind.
Our family understands. They know it is for a better future, and they support us 100%, but it is still hard.
Across the road, Grayson and his cousin don't know where they're going. Neither do they care. They just want to leave. But all the tickets to the border are sold out. I asked Grayson how he feels about Mr. Maduro's victory.
¿Qué piensa de la victoria de Maduro?
Mr. Maduro won yesterday, and we're leaving today. How do you think I feel? The hardest part of this for me is not being able to hug my 3 kids. Looking at photos just isn't the same.
Nearby, Maria's been working in front of the bus station for years, renting her phones to those who need to make calls. This isn't Narnia, this is Venezuela, she tells me. She says she's never seen so many people queuing for tickets to leave. Something needs to change.
The scene of Venezuelans leaving on the bus every day tells you all you need to know about what people feel about politics here. Mr. Maduro has won another 6 years in power. And the only change most Venezuelans expect is that their lives will get much harder.
5,000 Venezuelans are leaving every day. With this election win, that number's expected to rise. In a country where vast oil wealth once flowed, more people are eking out a living in these muddy waters, searching for treasures. Nicholas has been working in this river for 14 years.
When I started, there were about 6 people working here. Now with the crisis there are more than 100.
It's thin pickings. These coins used to be worth something, but with hyperinflation of more than 30,000%, they're no more valuable than the sediment itself. Instead, he's on the lookout for silver and gold. Even this earring backing could change his day. The nights, though, are long for a gang of boys living on the street. The youngest is just 5 years old. Every month there are new arrivals. When dusk falls, their work begins, begging for something to eat. It used to be that lots of people came in their cars to drop food off, 8-year-old Jose Angel tells me. But with the crisis, fewer people can be generous. With no change at the top, the march towards greater economic and social misery is expected to quicken. These little boys never had much of a future. but it's looking far less hopeful now. Katie Watson, BBC News in Caracas.
Next, the first official pictures from the royal wedding have been released by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The newlyweds said they felt lucky to have been able to share their day with all those gathered in Windsor and those watching on television across the UK, Commonwealth and around the world. Nicholas Witchell has been taking a look.
Relaxing in Windsor Castle, all the principal players, bride and groom, their close family and the bridesmaids and page boys. Standing to the couple's left is Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, who made such a deep impression at the wedding with her poise and dignity. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh are seated in front of Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall. Among the bridesmaids and page boys, Prince George is smiling, Princess Charlotte is sitting on her mother's lap. The second picture shows Harry and Meghan in a more relaxed pose with their young attendants. George has an even bigger smile. Charlotte is sitting on the floor holding one of the bouquets. The third half is a black and white portrait of the bride and groom looking very happy on the east terrace of Windsor Castle. So what do people make of the pictures?
To see a woman of colour in the royal family, which inherently has been white, that acceptance, it does mean there's a step forward.
That's the Commonwealth's history, our history, and a bit of history in the making.
It was nice to see Philip about as well.
For the Queen, visiting the Chelsea Flower Show this evening, the wedding and the positive reactions to its images of diversity will surely be a matter of relief. She knows that the family's younger generation is stepping forward now, and it seems well equipped for the future. Nicholas Witchell.
Liverpool hopes are high in the run-up to the Champions League against Real Madrid on Saturday, and their attempt to win the trophy for a sixth time. Much of the team's hopes are pinned on Mo Salah, the Egyptian, who's just enjoyed a record-breaking season for them. Salih Nabil has travelled to the village where he grew up to find out where it all started.
They dream of becoming football stars. In Mohamed Salah's hometown, Nagreg, all the kids want to follow in his footsteps.
When I see him playing, I feel it's me playing. I feel grateful that Salah is from our town.
Salah is like a big dream to me. I love Salah and other world footballers too.
The kids here are amazing. They are very enthusiastic, very optimistic about the future. Mohamed Salah has given them a lot of hope. They believe that if he has managed to become a top-class footballer, they can too.
Salah was just like these children, an ordinary Egyptian with a strong will and big ambitions. But his sports teacher immediately spotted his talent.
Mohamed had a very small body, but he was very skillful. We expected him to be a star, but he went far beyond our expectations. We are living a dream because of him.
Everywhere you go in Nagreg, you see the pictures of the man who has come a long way from rural Egypt to the Champions League final. But his school friends say he has stayed humble despite all his success.
He always used to dream of joining the Egyptian Football League and then play abroad. When he comes back here, he forgets that he is a star. He is just our friend and we are all equal.
Salah has never forgotten his roots. He is now building a school in his hometown.
The people here had already started to collect money to build the school. But when Salah knew, he and his father decided to fund the whole project.
From this sleepy town, Mohamed Salah has united Egyptians from all backgrounds, winning their hearts with his success on and off the pitch. Salih Nabil, BBC News, Nagreg.
Yeah, good luck to him in the final. Right, a reminder of our top story just before we go. And it's the threat, of course, from Hawaii's Kilauea volcano continues. People are being told to stay indoors due to danger of toxic gases. That's it for the moment. You can always find me on Twitter. This is BBC News.